Alright, just okay, like, okay. Alright, okay. Oh, right. I know. Yeah. try to get this out definitely a lot sooner. It's just having a bit of a hard time. Okay, one more. I think he just, he's. I think he has to go outside. I think he needs to go to the bathroom real quick. I'm fine. My dad is. So give me a moment. I mean, let's make sure he takes care of his business, and we'll come back and we'll take care of our business. Got him. Okay. All right. Sorry. I've been having a bit of an off day today. Yesterday, it's just but that happens. You know what I mean? It comes with the territory. How you guys doing? Welcome back. Probably shouldn't say this. We're asking who owns reality. Sorry, I kind of like nicked my finger, but I'm dealing with it. I'm like starving. I just need to take one bite. You get my system just so I can get my brain rolling. Now, if you guys watched the last episode, you already know your plate is weaponized. Poison plate. Well, that really showed us how ultra processed food is like slow rolling people into an earlier death, right? Chronic diseases and debt while corporations cash out. But tonight, we're not going to be staying in the kitchen. Tonight is follow the money night. Okay, guys? Because here's the uncomfortable thing. And it's not my stomach. Well, it's that too. But Coke isn't the final boss. McDonald's isn't the final boss. Okay, guys? Nestle, Pepsi, Mars, Kraft, those are mid. They're pretty mid, in my opinion. The ones you see, you know, they're not the ones you want to worry about. Yeah, you do. Like, not worry like that. Like, please don't panic. All right, please, nobody panic. You see how I'm calm, cool, collected, 3 C's. Right. Sometimes I'll be hot, but you gotta remember that. I'm dealing with a lot of battles myself, so. Today, we're going into the big thing. You seen the dogs been kind of hyped up. I actually have to, keep him chill. I mean, he's probably hyped up because I get hyped up. We're kind of like in sync. So like when my brain's going 80 bazillion miles per hour, and it's been doing that on and off and on and off and on and off because I've been putting a lot of work into how we're gonna be going into this or presenting this and whatnot. Just a little tangent. I have to, but he's kind of like calmed down, chilled down, mellowed out, and everything. It's kind of actually helped me. I actually feel it. You know what I mean? I actually feel it. I feel calmed down and mellowed out now. Or maybe it's the other way around. Who knows? But it, I don't know. Who knows? Who really knows? But today we're focusing on cui bono. Who benefits? See, there he is, man. I can't say the word. Can't say the word before he starts getting nervous. He's like, I need to get out of here. You said cui bono. We didn't. He knows I've been working on this one all long time. Okay. Who benefits though? When you start asking that question, you don't let go. You keep hitting the same clusters of names. You know what I mean? You either get to those old banking houses and oil dynasties like J.P. Morgan and Rockefeller, Standard Oil, Dulles Brothers, War Profit Networks. The central banking architecture, Federal Reserve, income tax, permanent war finance. And now in 2026, it's the big three, right? BlackRock, Vanguard, Street. These are your giant asset managers, guys. This isn't going to be abstract. I'll be giving some specific names, some specific dates, specific mechanisms, and how that money is consolidated, okay? Tonight, I'm going to be showing you exactly how this system works, and it's not theoretical, it's not abstract. Okay. Like I said, this is institutional grade research, declassified documents, SEC filings, peer reviewed papers, congressional testimonies under oath, everything you can verify yourself. Okay. That's the most important part, that you go do the work yourself, man. Don't listen to me. Do it yourself. This is I'm going to be honest about what I'm certain about, okay? And what I'm inferring, okay? I'll try my best to distinguish between that and, what's proven by government documents and what's like really strong inference from available evidence, okay? And, you know, but that's how credible analysis works, okay? It tells you the difference between certainty and interpretation. That's the whole point. All right. That's right. Reality versus the terms and conditions of reality and the narrative of reality. You know what I mean? Like, I want to be open with you. And it took me a long time to work on that. What you want? You want weed?
The glasses.
Glasses?
Glasses?
Oh, no, no. Mm. This is really, really good, by the way.
Like it?
I love it. It's delicious.
Oh, good, baby.
Thank you. I love you. Boy, he's real excited. But we got company over right now, so let me let him out there. He wants to go hang out. You want to go hang out, boy? There you go. There you go. Hey, you better not be messing around anybody's meals. You already ate yours. Might as well come back. You're not getting nothing out there. Just so you know. Okay. Excuse moi. You know what I mean? Like, clearly, everything in the world is trying to keep me from talking about whatever this thing is that I'm going to be talking about. So, let's try to get into it, okay? What was I? I don't even remember what I was talking about. No. Cui bono. All right. When you start asking that question, all right, we already know. You start getting these same names, right? Start getting JP Morgan, you get into Rockefeller, Standard Oil, Dulles, shit like that, And then now here today, we're at Vanguard, State Street, and BlackRock. These are asset managers that are top shareholders across basically everything from food, pharma, and media, tech, weapons, you name it. And tonight, I'm going to show you, well, I'm going to try my best to show you how the system works. Or at least we're going to be talking about it. You know what I mean? This isn't theoretical stuff here, all right? We're going to be talking about, like how the money is really consolidated, specific names, dates, and mechanisms, everything, the good shit, right? So, you know what? I think I know what the fuck is missing. You know what else I haven't done all fucking day today? I mean, like, really, like, I haven't really done all day today. I haven't sat back and ripped this freaking bizone. You know what I mean? I feel like something about the bizone gets me busy. You know what I mean? Like, I do. Sometimes I'll do a wake and bake. Today was, I don't know. There was a lot of stuff. This week is a very important week for me in my personal life. So I guess I'm just like extra frazzle brain than normal. Like normally I'm just like, I'm normally normal frazzle brain, enough to at least, sit there and ramble for a couple of hours. And lately it's been getting harder and harder, getting closer and closer because, like, there's a lot on my mind and it's hard for me to like sift through everything all the time. But we try our best to keep rolling. I mean, it's all we really can do, right? But we are gonna start. We're gonna start where the story, usually doesn't get told. It's the story Americans don't get taught, or if they do, it's super sanitized into irrelevance. And that's that the United States spent most of the 1800s in essentially like a open world against like centralized banking, right? And the second bank of the United States was chartered in 1816, and pretty much it functioned like proto Federal Reserve, right? So it's essentially like what we have before the Federal Reserve, the shit that we got now for like your dollar bills and shit. And it was a private institution, right, wielding enormous amounts of fucking power over the nation's credit, currency, and state banks. And the problem was that it was run by private bankers whose job was to make money, and they weaponized that power to enrich themselves and all their fucking buddies, assholes. But I mean, like, but if you think about it, like, is that really evil in the grand scheme? If when you're really thinking about it, if you take a step back, if you and some of your homies came together and you guys were like, I got this fucking great idea and it's gonna fucking consolidate a lot of fucking power into our hands and we're gonna be able to fucking essentially run the world. Oh yeah, fuck, that sounds fucking great, right? Yeah, yeah. But like, I guess you're not really thinking about like the rest of the world, and I guess that's where it's not so great. You know what I mean? I guess that's where it's the problem because the rest of the world still has to exist. So I guess a better question would be like, how can we do that and like have everybody genuinely be like better off for it? Like everybody, la di da di, everybody. I mean, I've always been told that you're only as strong as the weakest link. So based off of our weakest links, you know, um, humanity isn't doing so hot. You know, we're not that strong of a chain, I guess. If we were to be, adopting the chain analogy, but that's just me. But yeah, that was back in like 18, what 18, like 1816. So by 1829, this is when, good old fashioned Andrew Jackson, that's just good old fashioned Andrew Jackson. You know what I mean? I feel like, I don't know if there's a lot of presidents out there, but if there was, this one was definitely the one that was against the bank. You know what I mean? Andrew Jackson, he's the one that decided that the bank was like literally unconstitutional and corrupt and a direct threat to the republic. And he was right. He's not wrong. The bank did concentrate financial power, into elite hands who could, like, manipulate the entire economy and then trigger panics whenever it benefited them, and, control politicians. If this is ringing a bell in 1829, then, you're not crazy. Then there's also in 1832, when what's his name? Nicholas but but Biddle. I think it's Nicholas Biddle. If I remember correctly, it was Nicholas Biddle, and this dude was like the bank's president who pushed Congress to renew the charter early, and betting Jackson wouldn't veto during an election year. Like he gambled that the president wouldn't do a veto during an election year because like he's just like, this guy doesn't have the fucking balls, and he did. Like he called, like he did veto it. And then not only did he veto it, but then you, then he won. And then he won the election. He won the re-election in a huge fucking landslide because the people agreed with him because it was fucked. But in 1833, he ordered federal deposits removed from the second bank and redistributed it to state banks. The bank lost its power, and then Biddle retaliated. So he deliberately contracted credit, right? He admitted this, and then he said he was fighting fire with fire, ready to drive banks to their knees to compel the government to, like, reverse course, like, like change their mind or whatever. And it essentially, like, weaponized the economy on purpose. He deliberately caused a financial pain to force Jackson to back down, and he was willing to destroy regular people's lives just to maintain his grip on the economy and shit. But of course, it didn't work. Jackson didn't do shit. The second bank actually 1835 is when it expired. So it was, like, it was done, right? And it was like 77 years. So for like 77 years, the United States didn't have any central banks, right? State banks competed, private bankers competed, financial power was decentralized and constantly fought over like normal. But the people who lost the bank war, like those motherfuckers didn't really give up. They just waited, right? Time, just wait, it's the ultimate weapon. And it's really because they understood that power always wants to reconsolidate. It's an inevitability. You just need the right crisis. That's all. You just need the right crisis. So why consolidation was failing so much before 1907? Um, Now here's what's important, okay? There wasn't just one chance at consolidation. There was multiple chances of this stuff happening. And power failed repeatedly. This matter was because it shows now there's I mean, it wasn't just inevitable. It was actually like fought and then prevented, and then it finally succeeded when the conditions aligned. Uh, Between 1836 and 1907, the US experienced what was known as financial panics. So it happened in like 1837, 57, 73, 93. And each panic was essentially an opportunity for centralization. and each time it was attempted, and each time it was prevented. And then what was it? I think it was so after what 1907 that was the deliberate trigger 1907, right? So in 1907, right, Augustus Hines and Charles Morse, and I mean, now we don't know. We don't know that it was deliberate trigger. It could have been an opportunistic exploitation, right? But either way, Augustus Hines and Charles Morse did make calculated moves to corner the copper market, right? And this is very, very important because these guys were connected to Rockefeller, right? Morse had ties to the banking establishment, and they weren't random operators. They were part of the elite financial system. And then Hines was uh yeah, he was also connected. Yeah, I can't fucking remember how. But in 1907, they made an aggressive move on copper, and they moved knowing it could destabilize the credit. So when the copper corner failed, a panic erupted, right? And that's where the question, that matters. Did they intend to trigger a full panic, or did they just miscalculate, right? Well, there's a lot of fucking mixed evidence on that part, right? So they did move on copper. A panic resulted. This was not engineered, right? And from the top by Morgan and the Fed, it was either deliberate trigger or miscalculation. But either way, the moment it started, JP Morgan was positioned and ready to go, right? What's important about that is that Morgan had been positioning himself for as indispensable for over 20 years at this point. The panic was the movement. You know what I mean? He moved. Like he moved, the panic was moving. It's just like they were like buddies. It was like him and his shadow type shit. You know what I mean? Now, whether the crisis was planned or seized, the consolidation that followed was immediate and total. Okay. JP Morgan's 1907 moment was the instant the panic hit. Morgan moved, then he locked in New York bankers and his library, and he forced pledges. He decided which banks would survive and which ones would fall. And overnight he became a one-man central bank, right? And the message was clear. Financial system fragility requires centralization, and Morgan had proved it, right? He was just like, this, it just needs to happen. You guys can't do it. It needs to be centralized, right? And Morgan's intervention came it came to become the justification for creating a permanent total central bank, right? We can't rely on one man's goodwill. We need an institution, all right? And here's what's strategically important by that. By 1907, the consolidators understood what it would take to win. They had failed 4 times with smaller panics. The 1907 panic was large enough, right? Morgan's intervention was dramatic enough. The consensus formed, centralization was necessary. That's very important. Just remember how that happened. It wasn't just one time it happened. It wasn't just twice. No thrice, good sir. But quattro? Yeah, 4 times. By the fourth time, everybody was so beaten and broken down. It's like, fuck it. And then business as usual. sorry. I gotta eat, man. I'm starving. When the moment comes, you take it, right? And then when you can finally eat, you get it when you get it. But yeah, we need an institution, guys. Centralization was necessary. You needed it. And, it didn't take long. It didn't take long for the Feds in World War One. Because, they're like right after another. There's like Feds and then World War One, right? And the same bankers who built the Feds made fucking fortunes funding both sides of that war. Okay. So in November of 1910, a secret meeting was held on Jekyll Island, Georgia. 6 men showed up traveling under fake names, claiming to be on a duck hunting trip. Everybody who knows anything about conspiracy theories knows about this meeting. And if you don't, now you do. It happened. It really happened. Whether or not you want to believe it or not, that happened, right? They were drafting the Federal Reserve blueprint. It happened. All right. The attendees, Senator Nelson Aldrich, who chaired the Senate Finance Committee, Assistant Treasury Secretary A. Piatt Andrew, Henry Davidson, Arthur Shelton, Frank Vanderlip, and Paul Warburg, right? Nelson Aldrich was the Republican power broker. His daughter married John D. Rockefeller Jr., and Aldrich represented very old money and banking interests. Henry Davidson represented J.P. Morgan's firm. Frank Vanderlip represented Rockefeller interests. Paul Warburg represented German banking families with international connections. And they drafted the plan, they designed the structure, they kept it secret. The public didn't know that the central bank was being designed behind closed doors by the richest bankers in America. And on December 23rd, 1913, Congress passed the Federal Reserve Act. And Woodrow Wilson, president of the time, signed it the same day. Hey, we have an idea. Sure, let's go. And the Fed was sold as a public institution. Good for the people. Safety for savers. And protection from financial chaos. But the actual structure is a little bit different. You see, the Federal Reserve was a private public hybrid owned by member banks, not the government. The government doesn't own it or didn't own it. I don't know who the fuck owns it anymore. Who fucking owns it anymore? But the bankers own it. The bankers owned it. The regional Federal Reserve banks were run by private bankers, not appointed by the president at this point, right? Not confirmed by Congress. They were run by bankers. And the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, at the most powerful branch, was run by Benjamin Strong, a deputy of J.P. Morgan. The man running the most powerful central bank in America worked for J.P. Morgan. So the people who caused the 1907 panic, who profited from it, who bailed out the system, they now controlled the institution that would regulate credit and currency for the entire country. All right. Jackson had warned that centralized financial power would be weaponized. And 77 years later, the bankers got their bank back. And at this time, it wasn't going anywhere. Okay? Because, we're still here, and I'm pretty sure I still use Federal Reserve notes. All right? But the Fed wasn't just about domestic control, it was designed to finance permanent war and imperial expansion. Okay? I don't know what the fuck that sound is out there. I think it's the corn guy. What's fucking my head up is that this is real life. You know what I mean? This is real life. This isn't fake life. This is real life. And it's all documented. This is all declassified. This is all archival. Historical facts. You can verify this yourself. Okay? But most people don't know it because it's not taught in schools and it's not popular to talk about. World War I wasn't just a geopolitical disaster, it was a business opportunity, and American corporations and banks cashed in on both sides. Standard Oil was controlled by the Rockefeller family, and by 1911, Standard Oil controlled 91% of oil refinement and 85% of all the final sales in the United States. That's monopoly dominance. Achieved through crushing competitors. And anybody who is anybody knows that Rockefeller was fucking ruthless when it came to crushing his competitors, whether it was bribery, intimidation. That motherfucker had built an empire on top of monopoly, you know. And even after Standard Oil was broken up and under antitrust laws back in 1911, the Rockefeller they maintained control over successor companies. You know, their power remained. And during the First World War, while American soldiers were dying in trenches in France, Standard Oil was selling oil to Germany, actively trading with the enemy, while American boys were getting blown up. Rockefeller was making profits off of German military fuel. And this is documented. Historical record: Standard Oil supplied Germany throughout the war despite formal American neutrality. And the profit motive overrode patriotism. Fiduciary responsibility. They got to make money. It's their job. If they're not making money by any means necessary, they get terminated. Ever wonder why they say terminated instead of just fired? Morgan's banks, you know, they became the official purchasing agents for both, the UK and for France. And during the First War, um, Morgan he coordinated billions of dollars during the First World War, billions of dollars with a B in loans and arms purchases. All right. Morgan made money on every single transaction. The war was the most profited period in the firm's history. And while they were arming one side while positioning themselves as neutral, they profited from the death. And the federal government enabled it. Okay? It wasn't like they're like, hey, how to stop that? They allowed it. The American corporations and Nazi Germany are also buddy buddy. If you thought it was just during the First War, it was also during the Second War. Okay. That's where the American corporate collaboration with fascism became like systematic and undeniable. In the 1920s and 1930s, American corporations poured massive investment into Germany, not just a little, massive amounts of fucking money. I'm talking about massive. They built factories, they transferred technology, they integrated themselves into the German industrial base. This wasn't an accident. This was a calculated strategy, okay? When GM took over, what was it called? Opella. It was a large car manufacturer out there, and in 1937, GM subsidiary had tripled the size of the Daimler Benz and quadrupled Ford's German operation. By the end of the 1930s, Opel was valued at 87 million dollars roughly. And that's like 1.1 billion dollars today. Okay. That's a lot of fucking money. Also, during the Second World War, Opel produced military vehicles and equipment for the Nazi war machine. That was the primary purpose of it, actually. And here's what's really fucking fucked up, right? GM's sales model was structured so that the sales to the German army yielded like 40 fucking percent higher per truck, right? So, like, that's compared to the civilian sales. So, like, GM preferred supplying to the military over civilians because they got more money for it. So they preferred arming the Nazis because it was more profitable. The fuck, GM? Just saying. And they knew what they were doing, right? It wasn't like GM's leadership didn't know what they were doing. They weren't like, oh shit, man. Fuck, we didn't know. They knew. They knew they were supplying Nazi Germany. And they calculated the profit. Okay. It's documented. Look it up. If you don't believe me, it's documented. They knew. Documents also show that GM preferred military production in Germany while simultaneously resisting calls for military production in American plants. They wanted profitable military production for Nazis, but they also wanted American rearmament to wait. They wanted to be like, hold on, guys, you guys got to wait for your guys' bullets, all right? And that was that was the priority calculation. Okay, that's how corporate leadership actually thinks. That's what they think. They think about like, how can we like make sure we're making as much fucking money as possible. Let's play with a war real quick. Okay, and documents show this. You can look this up. You can find this shit on the internet. Okay, after the war, GM collected $33 million in war reparations. Okay. And the reason why they collected $33 million in war reparations from the American government, right, is because the Allies had bombed its German factories. So, just so you understand, GM supplies the Nazis, profited from it, then got paid again by the US government for the damage that resulted from their own collaboration, and they now profit from both ends. Ford did the same thing, only they took a little fucking, they took it a step further. They had some forced labor going on, okay? Ford established Ford Worke in Cologne, right? Ford Worke produced trucks, engines, and parts for the Wehrmacht using forced labor. When U.S. forces liberated Ford's plants in Germany, soldiers found destitute foreign workers confined behind barbed wire, starvation conditions, slave labor. After the war, Ford sought $7 million in compensation from the United States government for bombing damage to factories that had been producing weapons for the Nazis. The U.S. government awarded them $1.1 million. Thanks, America. Ford supplied the Nazis using slave labor. They probably got that idea from Werner. Maybe Werner got that idea from them. Who knows? Who knows, really? Right? But either way, they supplied Nazis using slave labor. And then the US paid for their damages. We're sorry that your slave ran fucking factories out there in Germany using fucking foreign prisoners was bombarded by American soldiers. We'll cut you off a small loan of $1 million. No interest. It's wild. But this is what happens when the same people who own the corporations also influence government policy. So I'm saying, fuck the lobby. Okay, we don't need a lobby. All right, I don't have a fucking lobby in my house. Why the fuck do I need one in my government? Okay, but IBM, was doing the same thing, and we know what IBM makes, right? But yeah, IBM established actually a German subsidiary called what I think Diomag or some shit like that. I can't. I'll never be able to pronounce it, and I'll never look it up to fuck figure it out again. But I'm pretty sure it's called Diomag. But it's applied data processing systems to the Nazi regime. I'm just gonna call it IBM because I mean, I mean, it's a subsidiary. It's IBM. It's like fucking a shell company. Not really a shell company, but like they're putting a lot of money into this thing so that way it can succeed. It's like the AirPods to the iPhone. I don't know. But you're probably sitting there wondering what the fuck, so what? What does that shit do? Right? Well, it actually organizes census data. They sent them technology to identify, track, and organize the destruction of Jews across Europe. They tracked populations, they facilitated the logistics of the Holocaust, and IBM systems were essential to the Nazi infrastructure. IGM or IBM, IGM, IBM made money organizing the Holocaust. They made a lot of fucking money doing that. Um, and they did it on purpose. It wasn't on accident. They weren't like oopsie daisy. They're like, how can we help you organize this better? You know? But I mean really think about that. IBM
Like that's the technology that was used to identify and track everybody, and like unalive them. That's fucked up. Like if you use IBM, you should question that. I probably don't even think about it. IT and T, which is AT&T. They had to change it. They're like, let's go back a couple letters so that way nobody knows. But IT&T and the Luftwaffe, that was an international telephone and telegraph that was acquired. It acquired a 25% stake in Focke-Wulf, a German aircraft manufacturer that produced fighter planes for the German Air Force. But yeah, so they were literally financing the German Air Force. They were selling communications equipment and financing aircraft production, while Americans were fighting the German planes. IT&T was profiting from the German airplanes, and then turning around and taking all that profit and pushing on you these fucking phone plans and these fucking phone these phone deals and shit deals. IG Farben and Zyklon B. I already know about these shits. And IG Farben was if I remember correctly, that was the fucking Dulles brothers. But I could be wrong. But just a little bit of information on IG Farben. They were making Zyklon B, and it was a conglomerate, right? And they received a significant financial banking from German industrialists who bailed out the Nazi Party in the early 30s, 1930s. But it was on the verge of going bankrupt. But when Hitler came to power, the Nazis didn't have any money. The industry bailed them out, and that allowed Hitler to consolidate that power. You know what I mean? But these American companies didn't just collaborate with these guys; they helped them finance and get the rise of fascism going in the first place. Like we did. Like we played both sides of the war. We do what we do best, man. We double dealing son of a bitch. I think national security is like the money security. Like make sure we're still making money. Which is kind of fucked. But yeah, after the war, the government, they had a clear choice. All right, they can either on one side punish all of these people, right? Reprimand them, make them suffer or whatever for the horrible things that they allowed happen because of their collaboration with fascism, or they can let it slide because we'll made a lot of good money. They let it slide. Fuck it. Fuck it, man. We let it slide. Yeah, man, they let it slide. Why? Because the Cold War was starting. Duh. And the same corporations that funded the Nazis, that built Nazi war machines, that profited from forced labor and genocide, well, those corporations were now needed to fight the Soviets. Duh. So they got off the hook. No prosecutions, no trials, no accountability. Just collective agreement to pretend it never happened. Historical amnesia. Oh my gosh, how do we build the pyramids? We forgot. Oh my gosh, how did the Nazis do all that shit with all that money, even though they're a war torn country? I don't know. Maybe America paid for it. We forgot. You know what I mean? It's just like it's who knows. But the companies that profited from fascism were allowed to continue operating, right? They're allowed to continue to do the shit. They get richer and more powerful than ever before. And then the government, these guys are so fucking high speed, man. Fucking high speed motherfuckers right here. These heroes decided accountability for Nazi collaboration is less important than having corporations fight for the Soviet Union. You know what I mean? So like let's have these corporations fight the Soviet Union, and let's just like like just remember that they that tisk tisk you know here's $1.1 million. Here's a small loan. Okay. But that calculation also told corporations something very, very, very crucial. You can collaborate with fascism so long as your country needs you later. You'll be forgiven, no consequence. And that lesson was reinforced many times, over and over and over again, for 80 years. Okay. Now, I just realized we've been sitting here talking for an hour, right? And we're not even beginning. We just tipped the script. You know what I mean? So here's what I'm thinking. We're on segment 5. Yeah, I actually have to pull up these notes so I can keep track because, yeah, I needed notes. I did. I needed the fucking notes, man. I needed just something to keep my mind on track. So I got these little bullet points here. That's why my brain gets strained because I sit there and fucking type and type and type and so much research, man. So much shit's going on in the fucking world. You can't fucking trust anything anymore because everything's all fucking. Things a fucking scam. Everybody wants something from you nowadays. You know what I want from you? I want you to move forward with agency. You know, informed agency. I want you to be okay. That's it. Really, that's it. So, I'm going to try to do these every day except for probably on the weekend. So, I'll try to come out with something new every day. But I was like, it's very quiet in here. I don't hear no scratching or yawning or nothing back there. I didn't smell no farts. And then I look back, my dog's not even up in here with me. I'm riding solo tonight. No Chewy. No, that's fine. Yeah, we're gonna get through this one. We'll get through one more segment. We're gonna sit here for a little bit. We're gonna talk about Operation Paperclip. We'll talk about that for a little bit. And after we're done talking about Operation Paperclip, I'll wind this down and well, obviously we're gonna have to do a 5.2 and a 5.3 and a 5, maybe not a 5.3. I'm hoping not. But this was the balls deep, so it might be like a balls deep continuing to go, I don't know. I actually spelled that differently. I spelled that balls deep, like balls. And at first I was thinking, I was just like, yeah, that'd be kind of funny, just say fuck it, balls deep, because I'm talk about a lot of shit. But then I thought about it, and well, I was like, well, I don't know. I don't even know what gets me in trouble on this thing anymore. So like, I mean that's why I figured I'd just do the live thing. You know what I mean? Like that's how outdated I am. I was, I'm doing these fucking raw dogging. I'm fucking. It's not easy, but I like it. I prefer to do it like this. So there ain't no fucking cuts, no edits. If you hear me fuck up, you hear me fuck up. You know what I mean? I don't need to fucking sit there and do that. I'm sitting there constantly watching the clips and videos and shit and everything, and I'm just like how many times did they say that before they got it right? I wonder. Like they don't ever sit there and just like talk, use their mouth or something. I don't know, but that's just me. That's just me. I'm old school with the shit. I don't know. Maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm not old school with the shit. I don't know what I am with the shit. I don't even think I finished school. I can't remember. Yeah, I'm joking. I finished school. I finished school and then some things happened in my life. Yeah, so we're gonna talk about Operation Paperclip, and we're gonna talk about the fascist organizational structure that imported it. I mean, yeah, you know what I mean. Yeah. But yeah, so Operation Paperclip was it was essentially a class of I mean, it's kind of I kind of find it comical thinking about it. You know what I mean? It's just like I've known about Operation Paperclip since I was a fucking seed in a twinkle in my daddy's eye. You know what I mean? Like I feel like everybody's always known about Operation Paperclip. Everybody always knew about that stuff, right? These things are like old school back in the day tinfoil hack conspiracy theories. Now it's just I always sit back and I think about that shit. I'm like, why the fuck is it that all of a sudden, all these conspiracy theories that everybody's been listening to and everything like that for so many years, and they've always been pushed off as conspiracy theories. Now, magically, they're all turning out to be true. You know what I mean? I always wonder about that too. But then, looking at the information, it's just like, no. Or, I mean, like, some of this shit is unfortunately true. You know what I mean? And I think that's what I find out more than often. You know what I mean? It's like, unfortunately, a lot of this shit is true. Like a lot of this shit that people are talking about wearing tinfoil hats was unfortunately true. And it's just like, and the fact that we, kind of like, funded, invented, and, funneled over fucking the entire concept of, some of the most defining aspects of, like our own way of life, like the battle of good versus evil. Could you imagine the greatest fucking conflict in human history that had taken place? The greatest battle of good versus evil, fucking the Allies versus the Nazis and shit like that. And it turned out to all be fucking staged and rigged by the good guys who were both guys that did the whole time. And it wasn't even really the good guys because, when I say the good guys, I mean like shit, man. Like it makes you realize how fucking accurate Vault Tech Fallout was with that shit with Vault Tech and shit like that. It's just like, damn, that shit was a little bit more accurate than you think. But they just don't tell you what the names of those corporations were back then at the time. I don't know. I mean, I could just be rambling right now because I finally got some food in my head. Now weed's kind of hitting. I don't know. Who knows? But I do find it fucking hilarious that it's considered that at one point it was classified, that it was a secret. That's how you know, all right? All the shit stays here, they're like, hey, nobody's supposed to know about this, but guess what? What? Yeah. But it's true, you know? Yes. There was an Operation Paperclip. It was a classified U.S. intelligence program that ran from 1945 to 1959. The mission was straightforward. recruit German scientists, engineers, and technicians from Nazi Germany and bring them to the United States to work for the military, for NASA, universities, for private corporations. The operation relocated more than 1,600 German specialists and their families. Okay. Like they chose 1,600 people, irregardless of how large their families were. And then they brought those people and their families all to the United States, scrubbed their identities, erased their histories, gave them new ones, and then reintegrated them into American life. I don't know how much more but you know what the fucked up part was? And then immediately after told us to be careful for Russians. Like what? Like you're telling me that this entire time I've been fucking fighting Nazi Germany people and everything, and then you bring a bunch of Nazi scientists over here and their best fucking people and their families, and you integrate them into my fucking country, and then hide them, like you hide them in my country, and then you tell me to be careful of Russians invading me for the next fucking 20 years? And what the Russians were doing the same thing to their people? I don't know about that. I don't know about that. But that right there is the inference. I mean, I'm just noticing, you know what I mean? I can't help but notice that, I can't help it. It hurts. I freaking hate when I do that. Damn it. But what does it mean? You know what I mean? Like, what does that mean? What does that mean for us? Who knows? But it happened. Okay. Now, here's what a lot of people don't understand. A lot of these guys were confirmed to be former members of the Nazi Party. Yes. They had direct ties to war crimes. Yes. And like quite a few of them were involved in the forced labor programs that had connections to concentration camps. And the guy that was like the most notorious for this was Werner von Braun. And we all know about this guy. Anybody who doesn't know about Werner von Braun, I mean, come on. NASA, the hero. He's the hero of NASA, fucking parading through the streets and all that stuff. We already know that. And in that he was also a rocket scientist that, developed the V2 rocket missile. It was the one that was bombing London during World War II. The one, and he used slave labor to make those rockets. Uh, and then those same rockets became like, the face of, America, NASA, space program, the space race. Okay. Now remember, now, I've always called bullshit. Now, if you ever felt like you called bullshit on the moon landing for whatever reasons you feel like you have to call bullshit on it, just know I'm one of those people. Okay, and there's a few reasons. Now, some are understood a bit more than others. I try to do my research and whatnot, but you know, I'm not saying that we ain't never been outside up into the like we ain't never took a rocket and shot up into the sky. Okay, that's not what I'm saying. All right, I'm just saying that going to the moon, it's just a little bit of a stretch on an iPhone. Okay. I've asked my iPhone to run the computing numbers in order to go to the moon. And I don't think that it would be able to do it. I don't know. You guys ask your phone if it can take you to the moon or not. And let, let me know how far you guys get. But that's just me. I just don't believe everything that's told to me, though. So that's probably why. But I think about the fact that this is the man who weaponized slave labor, who designed the V 2 rocket using concentration camp prisoners, and who was complicit in systematic exploitation, and that man became a national icon. That man trained the next generation of American scientists. Okay. And the US government actively covered up the Nazi backgrounds of all the paperclip recruits. Files were sanitized, war crimes ignored, security concerns waived. If you ever seen Captain America, Winter Soldier, it's literally to slap you in the face with how obvious it is. You know what I mean? If you've ever heard anybody talk about they got to present it to you, they got to show you what they're doing for karmic retribution. They got to show you what they're doing. If people don't, if they don't show you what they're doing, then it comes back and bites them in the ass. So they show it to you. And if you don't fucking, if you don't fucking deny it, if you don't refute it, if you don't, rebuke it or whatever, then you've just accepted it into your reality. You know what I mean? You allow that to happen. You're allowing it to happen. You know what I mean? But that's just me. But then, I watch a lot of shit, and I can't help but notice like the patterns underneath it. I can't help but look at them and be like, oh, it's really trying to tell you right here. And I can't. Sometimes it makes watching movies and stuff a bit of a buzzkill with me because I'm the guy that's sitting in the movie calling the entire movie before the movie happens. I'm like, oh, I already know what the plot is. I can tell you right now, and I've never even seen the fucking thing. But it's patterns are predictable. You know what I mean? Like the plot may not be, but the pattern is. And if you can find the pattern, you can find the plot. But you know the pattern is always the fucking same, if you ask me. I mean, I don't know what else you can do with that. I mean, like they keep it a secret from you. These officials knew who these people were, right? They knew their backgrounds, but they classified the information and they moved forward anyways. Okay? It wasn't like they didn't know who these guys were. They knew exactly who they were talking to and who they were dealing with. And this is the part that is really really fucking crucial, and that's that Nazi Germany wasn't just evil ideology. It was a specific model of organization known as vertical hierarchy, centralized decision making, elimination of internal competition, integration of corporate and state functions, metrics based efficiency, and surveillance and control. Okay? Paperclip didn't just import scientists, it imported the people who ran those systems. When von Braun trained American rocket scientists, he trained them in the organizational structure he learned in Germany: the verbal hierarchies, the centralized decision making, the elimination of internal competition. The Defense Department adopted German efficiency models. American corporations adopted German management philosophy. If you think about it, IG Farben was a massive conglomerate that owned nearly everything in German industry. It was structured as a vertical monopoly, no internal competition, centralized decision making, metrics based efficiency, control of labor through surveillance. What's the modern equivalent of IG Farben? BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. These massive entities that own everything in vertical hierarchies, no internal competition, they all follow the same index strategy, just centralized decision making, surveillance based control. The organizational structure didn't die with fascism, it was imported. Okay. It was normalized. It became the template for modern corporations. We're not talking about ideology persisting. We're talking about organizational structure persisting. The mechanisms of control that fascism invented became the mechanisms of modern capitalism. So if you ever feel like saying that guy's a Nazi, it's not because he's a Nazi, it's because literally his structure of the is literally the exact same of that of the fascism group that was identifying as Nazis. So you're kind of mistaken on that. He's just an American, because remember that Americans funded Nazism. So when you say Nazi, you're probably actually just saying American, because it's just like 6-7. What's the difference? It's just where the money is, I guess, at the time. But yeah, cool, sure. But yeah, it didn't die with fascism, okay? It was just normalized, okay? So personnel stay embedded, their students learn their methods, their organizational philosophy spread, and then by the 1960s, the Defense Department and Fortune 500 companies were run according to management principles imported from Nazi Germany. And nobody fucking knows any of the wiser. Because, of course, as we know, the people that began instilling these structures here in America had their identity scrubbed. So the only people that knew that it was really them were the people that were making the immediate profit off of it. So they really didn't give a fucking shit. You know what I mean? Like, they really didn't. Really did not care. Okay, but you're probably asking why any of this matters now. And matters now because once these people, these former Nazis and these people with ties to war crimes were embedded into the American institutions, they stayed. And then they trained the next generation. Then they shaped the Cold War defense policy, and they influenced corporate R&D. And then they normalized hierarchical control structures that had been developed under fascism. So when you ask, how did Nazi ideology, corporate fascism, and authoritarian control get normalized in post war America? Part of that answer is we literally imported the people who built those systems and gave them jobs. No duh. But not no duh to us, because like, we were literally not told. Like, we literally did not get the fucking memo. So like, you can't be mad at yourself if you were lied to, right? You gotta fool me once, shame on you. But fool me can't get fooled again. You know what I mean, man? Yeah, all right. They got us. You got us the first time, and the second time, and the third time, and the seventh. All right, we lost how many times you got us, but you're not gonna get us again, okay? Or are you? I mean, who knows? Maybe this is the op. Maybe the op is to realize the op, so that way you could be like, we switched up on you. That's the old model. We've evolved. But you never fucking know. All right. You always gotta stay on your toes. And it's kind of crazy sometimes, but that's okay. But it is what it is what people will tell you. I say fuck that. But yeah, the organizational structures of modern corporations, that vertical, hierarchical, elimination of internal competence, all that shit, right? Operation Paperclip is the clearest examples of what happens when profit and power override morality, okay? Law and public interest. The United States didn't defeat fascism. It hired it. Okay. And the same corporations that funded Nazis built their war machine and profited from forced labor, and they're still here today. They did not disappear. They merged. We're doing a merger. You ever hear that line? A merger? That's what they do. They don't disappear. They merge. They do mergers. They consolidated. They evolved. Which brings us to 2026. Excuse me. I got a big old head. The big three. We're going to come back to this one tomorrow. I'm going to pick up right here tomorrow morning. I'll set up the time tonight so that way you know what time it is going to be at tomorrow morning. Or maybe I'll do it tomorrow night. I honestly I cannot give you a genuine honest answer on that because like my fucking yeah, it'll be tomorrow night. Let's keep it a buck. Let's keep it same time tomorrow, huh? We'll do it like that. 6, 7. I don't know why I keep doing that shit. It's just so fucking funny. Um, but yeah. We'll be back around same time ish. All right. And when we come back tomorrow, all right, we're gonna be talking about the big three. All right, we're gonna be talking about BlackRock. We're gonna be talking about Vanguard. We're gonna be talking about State Street. Okay. And we're gonna be doing a little bit of a jump forward, right? But I'll make sure to, you know, I'll make sure to do a little bit of a recap, but just check this video out before you watch the next one, and you won't have to worry about the recap. But if you want the recap, check this video out before you watch the next one. All right. You guys take it safe, take it dangerous, take it easy. See you tomorrow.